welcome to this week's Three Legs Four Wheels F1 podcast. It's Paul here with
Sean,
Chris, Lee,
and joining us to discuss what can we say about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, because it was unique. On the line we have somewhere
Sean Kelly, aka Statman.
Hiya, Sean. Thanks so much for joining us this week. We'd arranged this show a few weeks ago, and by God, have we got a race to talk about?
Well, you got that right. Yeah. I mean, we knew on paper that this was going to be a fast and possibly a bit scary racetrack, but it was even faster and even scarier. And it delivered one of the most extraordinary races I've ever seen. I mean, I struggle to think of an analogous race. Normally, when you watch a great race, you can think, oh, this reminds me of such and such a race, or this race. There was only one example I can ever think of that was similar to this, and it was Suzuka 1989, the famous race when Senna and Prost had their first title-winning collision. That, in terms of the tension at the venue. I mean, I wasn't obviously at Suzuka 89, but I was watching on television, and subsequently I know the stories behind the day. But to be in Jeddah that yesterday evening, when the two outstanding drivers of this championship battle were going at it hammer and tongs, it was extraordinary. It was captivating stuff. I mean, everybody, not just the fans who were there, but the staff, we're all glued to the television. Where normally we're starting to pack up stuff, we're all stopping. People stopping what they were doing to watch this, because you cannot take your eyes off Formula One right now.
No, I mean, we were. There was a crowd of us having a chat on our Discord server, and everyone was just. I think the general consensus was, I've never seen anything like this before in any F1 race or any motor race. And one of the comments was, is there a channel showing something like Pro Celebrity Knitting? I need to chill out after this.
Right. Yes. I shall sentence you a week of watching the 1999 Spanish Grand Prix to calm down.
Funnily enough, somebody's asked us to do
of the French Grand Prix.
Somebody's asked us to do a retro review podcast of that exact race, and my answer to that was no, bugger off.
Right. Well, yeah, that's definitely your Valium, Formula One Valium. Go and watch that race.
I mean, it'll certainly bring you back down to a sort of more neutral level, unless you've been eating cheese before you watch it. Then you will have weird dreams.
Well, people who follow me on Twitter and have listened to me on this show before know that, I've constantly said the good old days were not as good as you remember. And what we have now, Formula One has its flaws, but it has always had its flaws. It's a changing beast as technology evolves and safety evolves and, the earth evolves. It's a constantly organically changing beast. And some things about it are not quite right. Cars are too heavy or they're too long, blah, blah, blah. But at the heart of it, the racing at the front right now is as good as it has ever been in the history of the championship. And when all's said and done, we've got one last chapter to write here in the United Arab Emirates, which I'm talking to you from now. And we don't know how that's going to end yet. But up to this point in the story, I think this has been the greatest head-to-head championship season we have ever had. It's better than the Prost-Senna era. And I lived through that. So it's not like I read it retrospectively. This is better. This is something we will say 30 years from now. I remember that Hamilton Verstappen stuff. You should have been there. It was incredible.
I think we're all hoping to say that. And this season has just proved that F1 is stronger than it's ever been.
You just still can't tell which way it's going to go, do you? Is Verstappen going to wipe Hamilton out and then neither of them finish? Has Hamilton got the momentum? Is it going to come back? It's just like, what is happening?
I mean, I've been making jokes. I've been joking about her F97 for the last 24 hours.
I think Lewis might get the full Ayrton Senna experience at the next Grand Prix.
Well, now you all seem, I say you all, I mean, a lot of people seem to be worried that they're going to run into each other and it's going to decide the championship that way. Or maybe, they keep running into each other. That seems to be an occupational hazard of watching a Grand Prix lately. But what I mean is that somebody is going to intentionally run into the other one. And normally it means Max running into Lewis. I don't think Verstappen is going to want to do that because the FIA, of course, have previous when it comes to disqualifying drivers from the World Championship who intentionally run another driver into the hedge to try and clinch the title. So I don't think they'll want to do that. And I don't think, there's also the pressure of, Honda aren't going to want to go out of Formula One in those circumstances either. And Red Bull won't want the negative publicity. I could be accused of being a Hamilton fanboy here, and I put this question to the floor, can you think of an example where Lewis Hamilton there was a genuine case of dirty driving from Lewis Hamilton in his career, where he properly put somebody in the wall or off the track while battling wheel to wheel?
I think the closest thing you've had to maybe unsportsmanlike conduct from Lewis was at Spa when he let Kimi pass and then he overtook him straight away. But that was before there was any clarification on the rules, wasn't it, about doing something like that? But that's the only thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah. There was a year when him and Massa just kept seeming to find each other one year. I can't remember what year it was now.
Yeah, but I can't think that any of that was deliberate.
I remember Massa starting on him in the pen. That was quite funny.
Oh, the infamous "Don't touch me" man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in Singapore, I think. They definitely had a lot of biffo going on there, as the Australians would say. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to deify Lewis Hamilton, but you have to say, for a man who's been world champion as often as he has, and a man who's won more Grand Prix than anybody else in the history of the sport, he has a remarkably clean driving record.
Yeah, I mean, he's made mistakes. The 2 collisions with Albon, in fairly quick succession over 2019 and 2020. I say quick succession. Obviously, there were months between, but within like 3 races.
Yeah.
Under very similar circumstances, but none of it seemed deliberate. There was no deliberate attempt. I can't think of it as a deliberate attempt where Lewis Hamilton has gone, you know what, I think I'll put you in the wall, or I think I'll put you off the circuit, or I'm definitely going to block you here because I know that you're faster than me.
Yeah. And Max, I mean, God love him. He is so exciting. But there are times when you think, you might want to tone it down a bit, Max. I mean, just throwing it up the inside there when there's already 2 cars there. I mean, that move he put on Ocon and Hamilton at the restart was, I mean, it's so very Max, but very, very high risk, high reward. And I don't think the thing is I'm sure Lewis Hamilton is perfectly capable of thinking, in those same circumstances, I could get that. I could do that too. But Hamilton's too wily and too experienced. And he just thinks, if it doesn't work, I'm going to I could compromise. At best, I could compromise my race. At worst, I'll be out. And I think Hamilton's very, very good at judging what's an acceptable risk. That's why I said at Silverstone when they collided, that crash started on Saturday because in the sprint, the same circumstances came out. Hamilton was towing Verstappen heading towards Copse Corner, and he went to the outside, and it didn't work. Verstappen kept the lead, and then he spent the whole rest of the sprint stuck in his dirty air. So when the same circumstances manifested on Sunday in the Grand Prix, Hamilton went to the inside, and he kept it in there because he knew this is the win right here. If I get stuck behind Max again for another 20 laps like I did yesterday, it's over. My tires won't last. I'm going to get understeer, blah, blah, blah. It's now. Now is the moment where we go aggressive. And unfortunately, they collided. But if you look at it, if you itemize the events chronologically, you realize that's how we got there. So Lewis was still going through it and thinking, if I get that chance, I'm going to the inside and I'm staying there, and I've got to make it work. So it's a very rare instance where Lewis got super aggressive, but you can see the thinking behind it. Whereas Max will just say, "Oh, just stick it up the inside and we'll have a go here," every time. And it makes him brilliant to watch, but also can make him slightly flawed when it all goes a bit wrong, as we saw in Jeddah.
I still think that, especially that where Max sort of cut the corner and cut right in front of Hamilton, I think there was a couple of instances where Max didn't particularly mind the idea of neither car finishing and going to the next race with a 9-point lead.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have been so bad for him, would it? But then there was a point in the race when he was winning, and it looked like he might be 15 points in the lead at least.
Mm-hmm.
So, amazing. I mean, the swing is so massive. He could have been leading by 15 points had they finished the other way around. Instead, the championship the points are tied. The championship itself is not tied, but the points are tied. It's funny. It's only happened once before, 1974, with Emerson Fittipaldi and Clay Regazzoni, and yet that championship finale is not particularly well remembered. It's sort of. I mean, even I had to think: have they ever been tied on points going into the last race before? I can't think of an example. So I had to actually do a deep dive to find it. So I hope we get a championship finale that's befitting of this season, because it's just been the most exciting on track and off track season that I can remember. Yeah. If only they could all be like this.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this has been one of the best seasons in the sports, in the memory, since I've been watching. Anyway, it's been absolutely, as you say, every race you just don't know what's going to happen. It's going to, pendulum going to swing one way, and then when you think it's going that way, it comes totally back the other. Mm-hmm. And it's been that way all season. I do think you're a little bit lenient with your description of Max's driving, though, Sean. I have to be honest. I think I would go a little bit further. I don't know if you heard Martin Brundle's words after the race yesterday on the broadcast, but he said that Max had gone over the line a little, and it was a bit too much today. And I think that's probably the most diplomatic way of saying Max drove like a twat for most of that race.
Well,
do you think?
I'm sad
there's
that
a case
Brundle
to be
didn't
made?
say twat.
Do you think there's a case to be made because Max is always on the edge? And when something like this happens, and like sometimes you watch Lewis and he just finds that extra bit to do something. But when you're already always on the edge, that means when you have to try and find that extra bit to do something, you have to go over the line.
That Max is always driving at 100%.
Yeah,
normally,
he's always at 100%. So when he has to find something extra to fight to do a little bit
mistakes.
More, it's or it's plain fucking bad driving.
Well, I think it's. I don't think it's necessarily that cerebral. It could just be, Max has an inferior car and he's having to drive the wheels off it in a way that Lewis doesn't have to. It could be he's overcompensating for the deficiency of the car. We don't, because Sergio Perez has not been as competitive as Valtteri Bottas this year. So, yeah, it could just be that. It's a philosophical difference. As I said, Max has a great tendency to see a gap and think, stick it up there and let's see what happens. Whereas Lewis will think, no, now's not the time. Bide your time. We've got laps. We're going to have DRS zones. Let's think about it. A little bit more cunning, a little bit more Alain Prost. Whereas Max, I always make the Gilles Villeneuve reference, and some people flame me on Twitter because they say, oh, he's nothing like Gilles Villeneuve. Gilles Villeneuve was the fairest racer. And that's true. I stand by. The clanking noise you hear is a massive name drop. I once had a conversation with Mario Andretti on the subject. And the thing that Mario said was, racing Gilles, you always knew it was going to be fair racing. Gilles was never going to do anything dirty. He the toughest bastard to pass, but always fair. And I would never compare Max Verstappen and Gilles Villeneuve in that philosophy. But in terms of just the excitement they bring, I mean, think about what this championship would be if Max Verstappen was not in it. It'd be another Lewis Hamilton yawn fest. And Verstappen has absolutely illuminated this year and made Lewis have to drive 10 tenths where previously he would have been cruising. Right from the first race, Bahrain, when they were battling for that win, you were like, wow, Hamilton won that race, but he absolutely had to drive to the limit of his abilities to get it. And that, so Max has brought the best out in Lewis as well. And if Hamilton wins this championship, if Max wins this championship, it's great because he's knocked the champion off his perch. And if Lewis wins the championship, it's great because Lewis, of all these titles he's won, this is the sweetest, this is the greatest championship success. And to come so late in his career, when he's won all these other championships, and you think, wow, that 8th title was the best. Yeah. It was better than most of the other ones.
And also, he'd stand out there by himself as well. He'd be the only man on 8 titles. And that, there's no arguments then when it comes to Lewis Hamilton.
No.
Statistically, at least.
And no one could argue like, oh, well, he just had the best car. Yeah, he also had Max Verstappen buzzing around him almost every week. And he spent most of the championship in second place. It doesn't matter which driver wins it, it will still be incredible. And Verstappen, Verstappen maybe he's been a bit unscrupulous. He will still be a worthy champion. His numbers are still great. He's easily led by far the most number of laps in Formula One this year. And if Lewis wins it, and it wasn't often I would say this, but if Lewis wins it, it's kind of a bit of an underdog victory because the car didn't seem to be all put together until lately, and now suddenly they've figured it all out, and he's won 3 in a row for the first time. So,
Yeah, I think Mercedes have even used the term super diva about the car in the last week or so.
Yeah.
What's
happened is they unlocked. Sorry to interrupt. They unlocked something in that car before Monza, because I had a statistic. Let me consult my notes here because I want to get my numbers just right. There's an extraordinary statistic. I say extraordinary. I wrote it, so of course it's extraordinary. There is an extraordinary statistic in the notes, which I don't know if it made it to air. I don't know if Crofty said it or anybody else for that matter. But basically, up to Monza, Mercedes weren't very competitive in qualifying. It's on this. It's going to be on this page somewhere. Just talk amongst yourselves for a second. What's the weather like in Great Britain right now? Is it good?
Got a named storm.
Yeah, we've got a named storm on the way, so it's not the best.
It's not ideal.
But,
is it called Hurricane Verstappen, perhaps?
the Storm Barra, I think it's called. I'm guessing it was named by the Irish Met Service.
According to the news earlier, yes, it was.
There we go.
Well, there you go. Well, I can't seem to find the statistic I'm looking for here. I'm grasping at straws. But the gist of it was this. Up until Monza, Mercedes had... Oh, here it is. I've just found it. And I'll read it to you verbatim as I prepared it for the broadcasters. It goes like this. There has been a conspicuous jump in Mercedes qualifying pace from the Italian Grand Prix onwards. In the first 13 rounds prior to Monza, Mercedes were only quickest in 12 of the 39 qualifying segments, Q1, Q2, Q3, which equates to just 31% of the time they were quickest in the first 13 rounds, 31%. From Monza onwards, those numbers change to leading 17 out of 21 segments, 81%. So they suddenly went from being quickest in 31% of those segments to quickest in 81% of those segments. So from Monza since, they've suddenly tipped it to being the best team. And so they found something there. And of course, Red Bull are convinced that it's something hooky and not within the rules. But they unlocked pace in that car that they could not get to before.
It always astounds me when the teams manage to find something extra in the car, especially late on in the season when this is the car that they designed. They were pinning the hopes on for the year, and it's like, oh, hang on, why don't we try and do this the other way around? Then all of a sudden, it's you're gaining a tenth.
But do you remember the video that Mercedes put out very early, possibly even before the season started, explaining, it was James Allison explaining all the aero changes and how much percentage loss in aero that there was. It's probably still on YouTube. And it was he was going over the car and he said, well, we've had to trim this bit of floor. We can't use these anymore. This bit has to look like this. And we think it's going to lose us somewhere in the region of, I think he said 10 to 12% downforce. So, but what we're looking at is throughout the season bringing updates, which means that we'll have recouped all of that and perhaps then some by the end of the season.
Well, if going by those numbers, yes, they have. Yeah,
Yeah.
You know, the science of aerodynamics just amazes me how they can find extra time just by effectively moving one piece of carbon fiber half a centimeter.
Air bending.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And we're going to have these 2022 cars that was, initially they're supposed to be just horrible and 6 seconds slower. And now, when I was in Austin, I was talking to somebody and they were telling me that their simulation said, well, right now we're only half a second slower than we are with the 2021 car.
Crazy.
I thought, wow. By the time we get round to actual 2022, you're going to be quicker.
I don't even want to think about next season at the moment. I don't know about anyone else.
No.
I think there's still a
No,
lot to be done this season, I think.
Yeah,
It's so weird, isn't it? This was supposed to be the throwaway year. This was supposed to be the year where we were just treading water, waiting for the new rules, and look what we've got.
Yeah. The half step
Well,
with the
you
slight
say
aero
that.
change.
You say that, but of course that's what 1988 was when McLaren, the first Prost Senna season at McLaren. That was a throwaway year because it was supposed to be a restrictive year for the turbos. Before turbos were banned, and we moved completely to normally aspirated cars in '89. So it was a stopgap year, and that's why Ferrari just updated their '87 car. Benetton just put a non-turbo version of their '87 car together. Williams didn't have a turbo, so they were kind of compromised. And Lotus updated their car and took the active suspension off. They said, there you go, that'll do. Because they were all getting ready for 89. And McLaren was the only team to design a completely new car for 88. It would only run in 88, could not run in 89. And then we got that amazing season, Prost Senna, when they shared the 15 out of the 16 wins.
Yeah, maybe throwaway years aren't such a bad idea in F1.
No, we should throw away every year.
Right, we want the new 2023 regulations published as soon as possible.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, because we've had recent seasons, 2016 notwithstanding, where Hamilton's just been cruising to the championship from around round 12 onwards, to the point where Hamilton's won 7 world titles. He's never won a championship when he's been trailing with 6 rounds or less remaining. He's never won a championship from the back like this. He's always been, whenever he's won the championship, he's always been the leader, the favourite, whatever you want to call it, going into the deciding race. So, that's another thing, is that he's got to chase the game. Previously he's usually on a cruise by now.
I mean, usually he's won it by Mexico.
Yes. Yeah. So to go to the last round, first time since 2016. He didn't win it then, of course. So it's by no means a foregone conclusion that Hamilton would win in Abu Dhabi.
Oh God, we've even got a preview of that so far. Right, there are another 18 drivers that did take part. I suppose we should really sort of talk about everything outside the top 2 that happened. Haas is going to be particularly quick.
Well, yeah, when you say there were 18 other drivers who took part, also Haas.
All right, there were 16 drivers that took part and Haas. So it was actually Mick Schumacher that kicked everything off with the first walling of a car. And from then on, all hell broke loose.
Yeah, well, it's like the old NASCAR saying, "Cautions breed cautions." It was all going well until it wasn't.
And,
Pretty much, yeah.
And it really kicked off after that. I mean, Haas, there's not really much to say. Slow, off the pace. Mazepin, from what I could see, not at fault for his crash.
No, I think Mazepin really had a very unlucky weekend because he had that incredible near miss with Lewis in FP3, I think it was. When he came barreling around the corner and Lewis was dawdling, and Lewis hadn't been told by his team that Mazepin was on the way, and they just missed what Martin Brundle always euphemistically terms an airplane crash. So there was that, and then the race itself where he just ran into the back of
Russell.
Who was it? Russell. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
George Russell.
Sorry.
I'm
dying with jet lag. Sorry, my brain's not functioning.
Russell, who of course was slowing to avoid the crash that was going on in front of him.
Right, so it was just dominoes falling at that point. Oh, excuse me. There you go. The first 3 legs, 4 wheels yawn there of the 2021 season. It is half past midnight, and I had an 11-hour time change coming from California to get to Jeddah. It's really catching up with me now.
Oh dear. We will try and get through this as quick as we can for you tonight, Sean.
No, I tell you what, we need to get to who's the total shunt. That's what it is.
Moving on to Williams, Russell we've sort of already touched on because
Mazepin
touched on him in a private place. Latifi in 12th. You didn't really notice him, but then again, you couldn't take your eyes off the front two. It's very hard. We're giving 18 Giovinazzi participation awards here.
Well, Latifi must have done really well because he finished the race in 12th place, which for a Williams is a pretty good result.
I think he just had a clean race. I think that was about all there was to it. Everyone behind him, I think, had some kind of skirmish.
Yeah. Well, I call Latifi Steady Eddie because that's what he is. He never does anything particularly dumb, but he also doesn't get the big headline results that George Russell does. Putting the car on the front row, for instance. So he is Steady Eddie. Like he's the guy you want. If you want somebody to go around, give us a decent lap time and bring the car back all in one piece. And that's it. That's what he did here. Kept his head down and kept out of trouble and got a pretty good result. Of course, the big thing at the track was there was the first race since Sir Frank died, and as you're well aware, all of the cars carried Frank Williams. The logo of the original Frank Williams racing cars that started in 1969, and just deviating from the topic slightly for a second, I've always found it a bit baffling that they didn't make a bigger deal. Williams Grand Prix Engineering never made a big deal of Frank's past as a team owner, but he was in Formula One for 8 seasons before that. And he'd been on the podium 3 times as a team owner of Frank Williams Racing cars. But they always get discounted from the Williams heritage stuff. And I always think that's a bit of a shame because, I mean, they were legitimate results. It wasn't like there's any sort of creative accountancy involved in them.
Yeah, I mean, it was good to see that original logo on there. I've got to admit, I'd forgotten that was a thing. But I think every team was carrying it, weren't they, this weekend?
Yes, every team had that on the car. In fact, I was going to ask Williams for some of those stickers because I'd love to put them on my laptop because Williams was my team growing up, and I can't think of a better homage to the great man than to put his name on my mobile work desk here. Because I probably owe a lot of my enthusiasm for the sport to Frank Williams.
I mean, to be honest, anyone who grew up watching F1 during the 80s and 90s, I think, would be pretty much the same. Or certainly anyone watching it in Britain.
The FW14 was the car that got me fully involved in Formula One.
Right, and we've lost two of the sort of holy trinity of UK focused F1 interest in the 80s and the 90s, Frank Williams and Murray Walker, with only now Nigel Mansell remaining of that holy trinity of which I speak. But Frank always seemed to be, I mean, You hate to say, I don't like to say people seem like they're indestructible, but I mean, Frank actually literally put that to the test, and still came back and won world championships, and he didn't see being in a wheelchair as being disability. He achieved more after he was paralyzed than he did before.
Yeah.
Which is astonishing. Given the amount of pressure, travel, and all that stuff, it's astonishing that he managed that. He used to stay in hotels with hard floors, like marble floors. I remember when we were in Indianapolis one year, 2004, I think it was. He was staying in our hotel. And at the end of qualifying, we were all, not the end of qualifying, the end of the day of qualifying, we were all ensconced in the hotel bar, going over last-minute research, as you can well imagine. And Frank was in the lobby. And the guy who sort of was Frank's PA wheeled him into the lobby and then left him there. And then Frank started wheeling himself back and forth, up and down the lobby. He'd go up to the check-in desk and turn around, and then he'd wheel himself back down towards the main entrance, and then back around again. Well, it turns out that Frank did that to get exercise. And he would always stipulate, I want to stay in a hotel that has hard flooring, because I can't push the wheelchair through carpet.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's testament to his because he used to run, didn't he, quite a lot before his accident. So it was a testament that he tried to keep his exercise regime.
Yes, and then there's that
even
fantastic,
post-accident.
The fantastic. If you must listen to this. Have you listened to the Beyond the Grid with Patrick Head that he did with Tom Clarkson recently?
Many episodes behind on that.
I
But
haven't
I've got to
heard
catch
that
up.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, clear your schedule. Go and listen to Patrick Head on Beyond the Grid. It is brilliant, as you would imagine it would be with Patrick Head, because he's just one of the great, most candid people you'll listen to. Where he tells that great story of there's a famous photograph of Frank Williams running outside of the Grand Prix Engineering factory in Didcot, and he's with Alan Jones. Now, Alan Jones is in a tracksuit, and so's Frank. As Patrick tells the story, he said, I'm pretty certain that Frank and Alan went out there together. The photograph was taken, and no sooner was the photograph taken than Alan did a U-turn and ran straight back into the factory, because he was definitely not going to go out there and run.
I can empathise with Alan Jones. He's always been one of my favourite drivers for many reasons, including the lack of exercise. Right, where are we next? Alfa Romeo. Kimi in 15th had his race ruined by a bad pit stop, which didn't really get to see all that much of.
I don't think driving into Vettel helped either.
And there was that as well. A very un-Kimi-like move.
Well, you say that, but of course Vettel and Raikkonen collided on the last half of the Austrian Grand Prix as well. They're just getting their long goodbyes in order by repeatedly running into each other.
Yeah,
Badminton partners, according to Sky TV as well.
Pardon?
Badminton partners, apparently, the two of them, according to Sky TV, not just former teammates.
Well, when I say badminton partners, I'm not euphemistically referring to the fact that they keep hitting each other on the racetrack, are they?
Quite possibly.
I did think it was cool that Sebastian Vettel, by the way. I know we're not talking about Aston Martin yet. It was great that he did that thing with a karting race for women in Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I should say, for those who've never been to Saudi Arabia, that was my first time there. Jeddah is, on the western side of Saudi Arabia, is regarded, I'm told, as the most liberal part of Saudi Arabia. And I didn't see. There's all you get all these horror stories in the West about nations that you don't go to very often, about how there's no freedom and so on. I can't judge that part, but I can say I saw a lot of Saudi natives at the racetrack, male and female. It wasn't like the women were penned off somewhere or anything like that. And in fact, I walked along the Corniche the first night I was in Jeddah, and I saw lots of families picnicking together around the Corniche. It was like mothers, fathers, and children, and it was all very, very pleasant, I must say. So, yeah, I don't want it to give the impression that it was a hostile atmosphere. Far from it. The welcome was fantastic too. From the airport, they were so well organised. They really, really, really tried hard. So, you can have your own opinion about the government in a certain country, but the people were fantastic, and it's well worth a visit.
It's always been on the list of countries that I want to try to get to, but it's not sort of at the very top because well, up until yesterday it never had a Grand Prix. So places where I'm trying to get to usually got a racetrack involved. Now it's in the top 23.
Yeah.
It's in the top 23.
Yeah. Well, I mean, much as myself, you probably never thought of looking at where Jeddah was on the map until this weekend. And I would say this, for those who've been to Dubai and Abu Dhabi, it's definitely not that. Jeddah is a long way behind in terms of its level of development. There's a lot of flat, empty land in the Jeddah area, and there's not a lot of skyscrapers. But it's definitely the vision they have for 2030 is, they want to become a big player, and they want a more westernized existence, which is what we have in the Emirates here right now. It's much, much closer to Western civilization than old school Middle Eastern. And I think that's where they want to go with it. So if we stay in Jeddah, and of course at the moment we're not supposed to, but I don't see why we would leave Jeddah when it looks so good on television. I think they want to grow it into the sort of the next big Middle Eastern powerhouse city. So this Grand Prix will have helped that.
And it does have friendly cats, apparently.
It does. It does. I did my bit for Saudi Arabian cat Twitter across the weekend. Saw some fantastic suggestions for names like Didier Pironi and Pur Gasly, Lewis Meowleton, and my personal favourite, Kenny Scratcherson. Which is, you've really got to know your Formula One to know that one.
Yeah, I did send in Bertrand Gachot, but it didn't make the cut apparently.
Oh,
I jumped in with Fernando Alonso.
very nice.
Max Verstappen.
I mean, now that you're in the UAE, you're gonna have to find the cats there. We need F1 cat Twitter.
Yeah.
I've
been here plenty of times before, but I've never seen any cats in the UAE. Maybe that will change this week. But there's cats everywhere in Saudi Arabia. It's remarkable. Like, you'd think that they'd have, if you were going to have an infestation of animals, you think it'd be like rats or something like that. But no, they're all kitty cats, and they're all around the place. It's like a cattery. And they're all, and they're not. The cats aren't dirty. They're all very nice looking. And you think, well, you all got like groomers that you go to before you come out here and polish.
Yeah, Paul, you said F1 cats, but one of them made it onto the track in F2 because Ralph Boschung nearly clipped it, but it seemed very unperturbed by the incident.
That is true. Yeah, look, who was it that tweeted that photo?
I think it was Ralph Boschung himself.
Oh, right, that is one to look out for. Right on the apex of a corner as well, from the looks of things. Right, going back to where were we? Alfa Romeo. I'll see myself out. Giovinazzi participated his way up to 9th.
But he had a good quali, don't forget.
Yeah.
Giovinazzi had a great quali.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of coming good when it's a little bit too late, 'cause he's just been confirmed for Formula E next season. He's not really impressed while he's been in F1, but I don't think he's not had the machinery under him to impress. And I think Ferrari have now let him go, and that's why he's changing series. But it's good to see him in the points. I know, Lee, you've not been his biggest fan. I think you just called him dull.
Yeah, he's just a bit of a non-event, isn't he?
Yeah, he's there.
I mean, like you say, he's definitely picked it up towards the arse end of his sort of Formula One tenure. But you see, I know he hasn't had the car, but it's always been whoever his teammate is has always looked much stronger.
And I think this season more so than ever when he's racing alongside Kimi.
Mm.
Aston Martin next. Vettel DNF'd, and I didn't see why. They may have explained it, but again, I was just too busy watching what was going on at the front.
I think it was just the sheer damage after the Tsunoda ring and then the Raikkonen. I think car was fucked.
Yeah, 'cause he did get Tsunoda up the jack.
He said that on the radio, didn't he?
Did he say fucked?
Yeah, he said
Excellent.
now the car is and bleeped.
Fantastic.
So I assumed he said.
then
I assumed that's
I'm
what he
clearly
said.
speaking technical sense here.
Now come on, guys. Now the car is. Boop. So yeah,
The car is poop. Well, yes.
Yes.
car is
it,
boop. Yeah.
it would have been. And Lance Stroll in 11th. I don't think he wasn't really in and amongst it all weekend, was he?
He clipped a few people though as well, didn't he? Didn't Lance also lose numerous bits of bodywork?
He had some
There's
debacle with
something.
Russell, didn't he, at the start? Did he cut a corner and then not give a place back, and Russell got a bit shitty about it, and something happened there?
I think they were under investigation at some point, but didn't quite see it. So moving on further down, AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly, 6th place. Another of his getting on with it performances.
Yeah, in a quiet race. I say quiet race. He was quiet in a race that was chaotic, where usually Gasly and drivers who sort of drivers like Gasly who were just outside the usual proper sharp end point scorers can usually capitalize. But I'm surprised that the race that we had brought about the podium that it did. But for Gasly to still finish 6th is another strong showing.
Yeah, I mean he beat both Ferraris. That is not shabby.
Not at all.
And Tsunoda just goes wild.
I mean, he was actually
Again,
on
good quality for Tsunoda, wasn't
yeah,
it?
he was looking good that whole weekend, and then just did a stupid thing that now puts him on 8 penalty points on his license.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's not good.
Nobody's actually had a ban yet for hitting the points limit, have they?
People have got close.
Sean, you might be the one to answer this. Any idea who's been on the highest penalty points total?
What right now? You mean?
Well, no, sort of since they brought the penalty points in, who's been closest to getting a suspension?
I confess I don't know, and the reason is because I don't tend to track it because it's complicated to administer. Because of course you can add points, but they also drop off. They get rescinded. They're taken off your license at a certain date in the future. So I always have avoided tabulating that stuff in case I forget to remove someone else's penalty points at a given week, and then it skews the data.
I have a feeling Romain Grosjean came incredibly close to a race ban.
I feel like Grosjean and Kvyat both got very close once upon a time. Not to each other, although, well, they have done, I'm sure.
Quite likely.
Yeah.
Probably.
But,
Well, actually, the last thing that happened to Romain Grosjean in Formula One was getting too close to Danny Kvyat.
Very true. Very
Correct.
true.
Yes.
Actually, yes. This was, yeah. His last act in Formula One, yes. Kvyat wall.
We can laugh now, thankfully.
Yeah, absolutely, thankfully.
Yeah. Right. Skipping ahead to McLaren. Danny in 5th, Lando in 10th. Do you know what? I hardly noticed McLaren at all. It's very hard.
Lando missed out.
Yeah, they've had a crap time of it lately. I don't know what's the bottom's fallen out of their year. I mean, they'd only scored, I think it was 4 points in the previous 4 races. Lando Norris's last 4 results now are 10th, 10th, 9th, and 10th. And they were lucky with Ricciardo because the way the safety car and the red flags worked out, it shuffled him up the field. And he held on there. He had I think it was 3 races without a point, which is, if he'd gone 4 races without a point, he hadn't had that happen since he was at Toro Rosso. So they'd have an especially poor time of it of late. But I mean, this is the sort of result. It's not going to help them. It's not enough to help them overhaul Ferrari, but it's at least better than what they've done lately.
Yeah, the only thing I can think with teams who have fallen away a bit further towards as the year's gone on, and Aston Martin are guilty of this as well, is that are these teams that have likely stopped developing or bringing upgrades for 2021 and are fully focused on building new regulation cars for the following year? Not saying they'll get it right, but it's just they've moved their resources.
It's a theory. I mean, it certainly makes sense. It checks out chronologically. But the only people who truly know that was the engineering department, and I can't speculate to you because I have no way of knowing whether that's actually true.
No, of course.
Certainly,
it is pure conjecture.
It's as valid a theory as I mentioned about Mercedes taking a jump in performance at Monza and unlocking pace from their car. Well, you're not going to forget how to engineer your car, so it can only be a case of we've just decided not to put any more new bits on it because we're too busy with the new car.
Yeah.
Next up, Ferrari, Sainz in 8th and Leclerc in 7th, once again finishing pretty much line astern.
Yeah,
is that the 4th race in a row? Third race in a row.
Was it 4th race? Let me check.
Stats off.
I can't remember what I said. It was the 4th race in a row. Sorry, yes.
4th.
It was 3 races. It was 3 races in a row going into it. It was the 4th time in a row that the 2 Ferraris finished one behind the other, which is remarkable consistency from the lads, but not quite the result they were going for there, P7 and P8. But you can't deny both drivers are very evenly matched.
And nobody's getting a better car over the other one, and the car is finishing where it's finishing with them two, and nobody's getting anything extra out of it. You say prime candidates for the participation award there.
Ferrari have been all right this year. Let's be honest. Ferrari have done okay.
Yeah, after the struggles that they've had lately, self-inflicted.
Yeah, I mean they had. Last year was the worst season since 1980, so they couldn't have had a second season that was as bad as that one. They would have had to try really, really hard to suck that bad 2 years in a row. But being Ferrari, of course, they are capable of doing it.
Of course,
they've got things back on track this year. I suspect that the Charles Leclerc pole positions. I mean, they seem so long ago. But you think of it now. If we get here, we're here in well, not in Abu Dhabi. I'm in Dubai. But if we get to Abu Dhabi and Charles Leclerc takes pole, you'd be like, it's his 3rd pole of the year. And you'd be like, what? He's been on pole twice before. Because of course he didn't start in Monaco, so we didn't actually see him start on pole. And then in Baku, he got passed by Hamilton when Hamilton toe passed him at the end of the 1st lap, I think it was, or 2nd lap.
Yeah.
So. There is 1 lap pace in that Ferrari.
It's just the 2nd lap where it all tends to fall apart and beyond.
Between the 2nd and the 50th lap, it's not so good. Well, though, and you know what? I say that. I mean, Carlos Sainz has been out in Q2 like 6 times in the last 13 races, and he scored in all 13 of them. So it can be the car of the Ferrari. The pace of the Ferrari is obviously better. Race pace is better than the single lap pace. Funny because in Baku and Monaco it was the other way around.
I mean, you said they got the start and then the fall off, but the intro's a bit of smoke on the water that everyone knows. So that's the only bit people want to listen to.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I'm lost here.
Bad. Just we'll just let that one slide.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll move on to Alpine with Alonso in 9th.
Well, let's see if Paul can get a Bloodwind Pig reference in, and see if there are any listeners out there who recognise that.
I've heard of them. I couldn't name any of their songs.
You've heard of the Bloods?
I am aware that Bloodwind Pig is a thing. I couldn't tell you what they sounded like, but I'm guessing something like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. There we go.
Right. Or I don't know. I can't. Rod, Jane, and Freddie.
Whatever happened to? Oh, there was that love triangle that made the papers with them. Anyway, we are seriously digressing.
Let's move it right along.
Yeah, let's talk about Alonso. Lee, over to you.
It wasn't great, was it?
The love triangle.
Points,
Sorry, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've no idea what was wrong with him there this weekend. He just didn't seem to quite be on the pace after his heroics the weekend before, did he?
No, there didn't seem to be anything too sort of special about what he was doing.
He even spun, didn't he? Spun during the race too.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he went sideways at one point.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter someone saying that he was talking about stopping for an attempt at the fastest lap, but
it wasn't points for Alonso. I'm totally an idiot. I was just looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, 13th for Alonso. Awful.
I was going to say you've written 9th twice.
Point for 13th.
Yes, I've only just noticed that you've written 9th. Put down 2 cars in 9th place.
That's why I sent it through to you a second time.
Yeah, I've opened the first one. That'll be why. So yes, 13th. Yeah, apparently he tried to do a stop for the fastest lap and it didn't pay off.
Well, no, not if you're in 13th. It doesn't.
Suppose it would have stopped Hamilton getting it. You know, the tactical point loss. You know, Bottas with his
it could
2
succeed.
extras.
It could succeed from 13th. Honestly, it could succeed from 13th. If you're dumping the battery over a single lap on new tyres, you could easily set the fastest lap.
But you don't get the point for it.
He must admit it. Well, he wouldn't, and maybe that's why it ultimately didn't happen for whatever reason. But those are in the lower echelons of the top 10 have every reason to do it. So.
Yeah, true. And then I think possibly the most unpopular 4th place of the season because everyone thought it should have been 3rd for Ocon.
I was really excited for Ocon on the podium because I got the feeling there was going to be an atmosphere between Hamilton and Verstappen, and then Ocon just delighted to be there, and I wanted the contrast, but we were denied.
Didn't Ocon across the line call it a fucking joke?
It's cutaway drivers swearing as much as we do. Obviously, we don't get beeped as much. I mean,
you would be pretty annoyed, wouldn't you? You come out the last corner in 3rd place, and then the guy in the much faster Mercedes just decides that's the time he's going to pass you, and just get to the line ahead of you.
It was exactly the second time Bottas has taken a podium in that manner. He did it to Lance Stroll at Baku 2017 as well.
Yeah,
at the line, passing him for 2nd place. So Bottas, a fantastic guy to completely mess up a fantastic story.
And then we come to the top 2 teams. Bottas with his 3rd place on the line.
Yeah.
Perez DNF.
In a wall.
Yeah, Perez DNF because he was just...
Although desperately tried not to.
Yeah, although, what was it Leclerc said? I think he forgot I was there.
I think it was a little bit... What did everyone else think about that? Because I thought that was kind of Perez's fault. You can't squeeze somebody up against the wall and think that nothing's going to happen. Either damage to you or the car behind. It just happened to try and squeeze Charles Leclerc's front wheels against the wall and ended up turning himself around.
Yeah, it was a bit impatient, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he had the faster car, and there would have been opportunities to get the place later on, even in the same lap. But
he just sort of drifted across, didn't he?
Mm. Yeah, just careless.
No comment.
It was kind of a... Oh, hang on, he's crashed. So that leaves us with... do we call them the protagonists?
I think we were watching the championship protagonists. We were watching them for 99% of the race, I think.
There was a lot to watch. There was a lot to take in. Verstappen's move on the restart, diving down the inside of the corner with Ocon and Hamilton on the outside of him. Crazy move, but it's it's one of those that paid off. And then
It did kind of, yeah.
And then all hell's gonna break loose.
Yeah, the space was there, and he went for it, and that was one of his better bits of driving, across the race.
I think that's probably the best way of putting it, because there was then some not better bits of driving, as we've already mentioned. I mean, a 10-second penalty, and 2 penalty points. It's ticking the boxes, but was that the right response?
What other response would you have gone for?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, the other thing that I've got is, I don't know if this is all because we're now getting the race control messages on the TV coverage. But surely the making an offer of giving places back, is that a new thing? Was that done before it was broadcast? Shouldn't race control be controlling the race?
Yeah,
but
I think because it was under red flag, though, wasn't it? It was just like, look, you can
there
do
was
this,
time.
or I'm referring it to the stewards.
Look, it sounded odd. It sounded odd the way it was sort of broadcast out, and it sounded odd what Massey said. But I think we're blowing this out of proportion a little bit, because at the end of the day, Max Verstappen ended up giving the 2 places away, starting in third where he probably should have done. So it was a good way of resolving an issue.
How often as well on team radio, before we heard the team radio to the FIA, how often did we hear drivers making reference to Charlie?
I remember a very famous Vettel one where he had a message for him.
Yes. But yeah, we've always known there's been that communication with the race director. We just don't know exactly what it sounded like before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And going on the reports of what happened when obviously the collision occurred, Hamilton was just in the process of being told that Max was going to give the place back, and it's got to be tricky for race control to get all the messages to the teams at the right point. And just logistically, it just seems to be an absolute nightmare. And I think Lee, you do have a point. It's been made worse this season by the fact that we get to hear edited highlights on the TV coverage.
I don't like it. I don't like hearing the bickering. It's nice hearing the back and forth between team and drivers, but I don't need to hear the team bosses like complaining about people and like trying to get penalties and things like that. I think it kind of spoils it.
I don't know. It did give us the classic Michael Massey quote of, "I never read my emails during a race."
Sassy Massey.
Oh boy.
I've got to admit,
It can't be an easy job, though, can it?
I
Let's
was
be honest.
going to say, I've got
Race
to.
director is not going to be an easy job.
I've got to admit, it's going to be a thankless task. Being on point here, it must be like herding cats, because you're trying to keep 10 teams or 10 sporting directors informed and stop them from killing each other. Yeah,
you're always going to make somebody unhappy, aren't you? In that job, you're not going to be able to keep everyone happy. Your decisions or whatever it is you decide to do or not do is always going to upset one party that's interested in what's happening, and a lot of people don't seem to realize that. Michael Massey's not the guy who makes the decisions when it comes to penalties, etc. That's all referred to the stewards, who, the different stewards at every race. If I'm not mistaken,
It's just a squad rotation system, isn't it? There's overlap from race to race, but it's not the same 4 or 5 guys each time. I think they have a roster.
I've forgotten my point now. What was I going to say?
We
Must
were
have
talking
been
about
really
stewards.
good.
Yeah, it was leave it with me. I'll have a eureka moment like 5 minutes from now. I'll be like, now we've moved on from the subject. I remember what it was. Okay, carry on. Don't mind me.
But
So,
yeah,
I mean, social media is the devil at the best of times. But yeah, I did feel like the FIA and Michael Massey in particular got a pretty hard rap from a lot of fans for indecision or what they saw as poor decisions. But I've said it before. There's nothing uglier than when it comes to a sport than the fans of a sport so aggressively disagreeing with the decision makers. In football, when people are swearing at the referee on the TV in a pub, it's just the worst part about a particular sport. Any sport is when people are so aggressive against the decision makers. These people are put there for a reason. You might not like any decisions they make, but you do kind of have to respect them, because that's the reason. That's why they're doing their job. They're there to make the decisions. Everybody who's an armchair fan probably thinks they could do a better job of it. The fact is, you couldn't. Otherwise, you would be doing it.
Yeah, we're all armchair experts now. We don't need to study for degrees. We can
all get on Twitter and have a platform there instead.
Technically, I'm on a sofa, not an armchair.
We can all do 10 minutes. If we all do 10 minutes on Google, we'll all be highly qualified, virologists and epidemiologists. You know that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can do our own research.
Right, exactly. And what the only flaw of that logic is, what if your research is shit?
Then you shouldn't have looked it up using 5G, because that's what's corrupted it.
Well, true. I always say, when I meet people who are anti-vax and they say, I do your own research, I say, I am a researcher, dipshit. And I know plenty of people. I know plenty of people who are shit at research, and that's why I have a job. Next question.
Talking of things flying through the air, how impressive did those drones look with the circuit map?
I thought you were going to talk about the debris from the Enzo Fittipaldi Teo Porcher Formula 2 crash, because a huge. I genuinely thought that's where you were going, because we were in Paddock Club. A huge piece of debris launched itself probably 20 feet into the air and landed in the middle of the pit lane while people were scattering. It was no one saw it because everybody was focused on just seeing the crash. But a huge piece of debris came flying over the top of everybody, and fortunately it landed where there wasn't somebody, but it went over people and between them. So that was lucky. Sorry. Yes. What were we talking about?
Well, I was just about to mention the drones, but it's good to see that Fittipaldi has tweeted from hospital and a broken heel
and a slightly gashed eyebrow, I think.
Yeah, he was very lucky. Because I saw the crash, and I was watching it from the tails away shot. I was like down. Actually, Fittipaldi's starting grid slot was next to me, and I saw why he went over there, because all the light panels were on the left-hand side, on the pit wall side, and they were all flashing yellow. So he went right, and there was no panels on the right, and there was no yellow flags on the right. So he naturally moved away from the light panels, only to reveal the immobile Teo Porcher sitting there with all the lights. The rear lights on the car were flashing very vigorously. Which is kind of like, I didn't know that happened on a Formula 2 car, but it looks like when you stall it, those lights intentionally come on and flicker very violently, as if to say, "Don't hit me! Don't hit me! Don't hit me!" And unfortunately, in Enzo Fittipaldi's case, of course, they did. And he just missed a head-on. Luckily, it was almost head-on, but tell you what, that was scary to see right in front of my eyes, because we all know the Riccardo Paletti accident in '82, and these cars are a lot stronger, but still, you don't want to run into the back of one that's stationary. the Billy Munger accident as well. Another good example. It's,
Yeah, I was just about to
it was
bring
very,
that
very,
up,
very,
yeah.
very scary. Very scary. I'm glad everybody got out all right.
But yeah, I was actually commenting on the drones, the drone display at the end with the track map. Please don't tell me that was CGI and edited on.
No, I believe that was a real thing. I have to confess, we were knackered at the end and we didn't bother going outside to look. We just took it. We just took it as read. No one came back in and said, "Oh, it wasn't there. It was completely made up." So it must have been a real thing.
And then that, of course, just leaves us with rock stars and wankers of the weekend. Where do you go?
I mean,
Well,
there's a few options, isn't there? Let's be honest.
I'm gonna go uncontroversial and go Ocon for a rock star.
Kimi for a rock star, because on the grid, Martin Brundle asked him if he could have a word, and Kimi said yes and walked off.
Yeah. Typical Kimi.
did he really?
Yeah, yes,
is
carried on
spectacular.
walking. Gave him a
Yeah,
word.
said yes and then shrugged and carried on walking. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyone else want to take one? I'm passing the buck here.
Max.
Well, Ocon's a great shout on the rock star, by the way, because he really,
Yeah.
he was an interloper up there in the championship battle in an Alpine, so good for him. So it was never going to hold the pace, but I was gutted for them they didn't get that podium at the end.
Yeah.
That was harsh.
Was it by a tenth?
Because,
It was about
yeah,
that.
I mean, he was worth that podium. He hadn't fluked it. He had a really good day. So it was a bit sad for the lads and lasses at Alpine, who I know would have loved back-to-back podiums for the first time in 8 years.
Would have got to see him do his impression of Seb's "Well, I'm happy" from Monaco.
Yeah, that would have been it too.
I suppose you have to say Max in the wanker column.
I am
Yeah.
putting him in there. Just his driving was. But as I said earlier, Martin Brundle said it was over the line, and he needs to look at his driving standards. I mean, he left the circuit and deliberately stopped Lewis Hamilton from using the circuit to get past him. I understand it. It's desperate times, desperate measures, but dirty drivers always look bad only on themselves. It very rarely reflects well if you drive dirty all the time. And I can't remember, and I do mean this, not in a total anti-Max Verstappen way, but I can't remember a single most dirty display by a single driver in a single race, as we saw yesterday. I thought it was way over the line, and it was all deliberate, in my personal opinion, which is very humble, of course.
Those are big words.
I'm convinced. I agree with Flood. I think the move where he left the circuit and essentially Lewis had to properly back out of it to avoid a crash. I think he went into that move thinking, if we end up in a load of wheels here, I go to the next race with a 9-point lead, knowing that with the long run pace, Mercedes looked like the team that if they could get into the lead, they'd just walk away with it. And I think when you look back at the head on of Max and Lewis, it's the way Max looks in his mirrors as Lewis jinks out and he moves, and that's when he's broke. I think he was deliberately trying to take his front wing with him.
Yeah, I've not seen that shot yet.
Yeah, I mean, I confess, I only saw it when it was live. I haven't seen it back because
Yeah.
Yeah.
Verstappen.
not that I'm looking for any sympathy, but I had to get from Jeddah to Dubai, so I have been reviewing it.
Yeah, no. Have a look at when you're looking at them head on, because that's what did it for me, was the fact that you could see Max looking in his mirrors, and it was at that point I was thinking to myself, if this is looked into, and it turns out that he's dabbed his brakes as well on the telemetry, I think it's a slam dunk when you put all those pieces together. That's why I tweeted at the time. I feel this was worse than what Schumacher did to Hill and Jacques Villeneuve, just purely because I think it was a little. It was just a bit more. It felt more calculated. I
think also it's a lot more dangerous as well. You get the brakes in an area where you're supposed to do 195 miles an hour.
Yeah,
it's very dangerous. And I said,
car in front...
Sorry,
go
on. I was leaving the racetrack on Sunday night in an SUV packed with racing drivers. I was the only non-racing driver in the van, and I said to them, "So, guys, what do you reckon then? Does anybody in here want us to defend Max Verstappen?" And all of them unanimously, 100% vote was no, no. Like you don't act like that with single seaters. I mean, you can very, very quickly go to the scene of the accident if you're going to start pulling shit like that. It's one thing doing it in Porsche Super Cup. We're going slower and the wheels are covered. Quite another when you slap on another 50 miles an hour on the top speed and remove the wheel covers. You can fly a long way. So. They were unanimous. No one in the car defended Max. They said it's on him.
Yeah, I agree. It's as we said earlier, it'd be fantastic if Max wins his first title in Abu Dhabi, because he's toppled the guy who's won for the last 4 years in a row and 7 in total. But I get the feeling we're always going to look at this race as like, but what if? This is going to be like the smudge. If he wins a championship, this is the smudge on his championship, much like the 94 championship is always darkened by the Schumacher Hill incident. When Schumacher did it again in 97 to Villeneuve, tried to deliberately run him off the road and it didn't work. Am I right in thinking that Schumacher was accused of attempted murder by somebody? Somebody tried to bring a lawsuit against him for that. And
yes,
he was also he was stripped of all of his points in the World Championship. If you statistically look at 1997, Schumacher has 0 points.
Correct. Yeah, he was. I think there was a German man who tried to bring a case of attempted manslaughter for that offence, which I think he got laughed out of court. But it was just somebody trying to make a name for themselves. But you are right. He was excluded from the championship standings, but the results of the individual races continue to stand. So there's a slight legal difference there. For instance, Tyrrell were excluded from the 1984 World Championship in their entirety. They lost all of their results as well, and everybody moved up a position. The FIA didn't want to do that and make it too complicated, so they just said, right, we're just disqualifying you from the final championship standings. But all the results after that exist. So he still has all of his wins, but if you look at the record books, it says Heinz-Harald Frentzen was the championship runner-up in 97.
Yeah. So, and when you look back, back, what was that, 24 years ago now?
Yeah.
It could quite, it could quite easily happen like now. Obviously there's a different guard in charge now, but I mean, if driving continues like this and all they're getting is post-race 10-second penalties, then the threat of having being excluded from a championship when you could have won it is maybe that kind of deterrent needs to exist.
Yeah.
Well, that deterrent still does exist, and I practically guarantee you that Stefano Domenicali, who of course has been a team principal before, would probably have a quiet word with both of them and say, "Don't think we won't use the nuclear option if we feel like we have to, because you're bringing the sport into disrepute, winning the championship in that way."
Yeah, I get the feeling there's going to be 2 drivers' briefings next week. One for all 20 and an extra one for just the 2 of them.
I can't get out of my head that this championship is going to end up in a heap because of a 50-50 move that Max pulls. It wouldn't be a Schumacher type incident, but just one of those moves where if we come together, I'll win count back.
No, I believe it when I see it, because I'm convinced he'll be given every reminder that if you try and win the championship that way, you might find by the time you get back to Parc Fermé, you haven't won the championship, because the FIA might have said, right, well, we're already preparing the sanction, and the sanction is we're giving you a 50-point penalty. So, congratulations, Lewis Hamilton, world champion, and also congratulations to Mercedes, who inherit the constructors' title from Red Bull, or whatever. Okay, I mean, Mercedes is going to win this constructors' title, but the FIA, I'm sure, will make clear to them, look, if we think we were doing anything on purpose here, we will be down on your bollocks.
I do. I hope you're right. I have a funny feeling though that when the red mist descends on Max, that he forgets briefings.
I don't know. I can't see it. I can't see it happening. Then again, he gets it from his dad, doesn't he? Because Jos wasn't exactly the calmest and least crashy person on track.
That's the thing. I don't think it's actually a conscious, deliberate thing to crash. I think there's just something in the hard wiring of not being prepared to bail out of a move.
Well, bear in mind what Max is being criticised for. Incredible, just being an absolute, total, and utter bastard, is what we lionize Ayrton Senna for. Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to say that's terrible behaviour, but you have to apply it equally. And I often, of course, I usually regularly get flamed on Twitter by people who put me right on the subject of Ayrton Senna, or our Lord and Saviour Saint Ayrton, peace be upon him.
You put on Twitter the other day that we were in the year 2021 of our Lord Ayrton.
Of our Lord Ayrton, yes. Who, of course, never, ever, even when he was running Alain Prost off the road at 160 miles an hour on purpose, what he was trying to do was guide Alain Prost into the gravel slowly where there were some soft kittens playing.
So in Saudi Arabia.
He was well ahead of his time. Look, we'd normally do predictions for the next race. I just don't feel like I can. I don't know about anybody else.
No.
I think I just gave one.
I'd say my prediction for Abu Dhabi is this, and it's not a result prediction. It is a attention prediction, and that is that we could have a situation where one car is ahead of the other, and there's a late safety car or something like that, and then one decides to go for new tires and one doesn't, and then that influences the outcome of the championship. You could have a situation where one team has to roll the dice to win the championship. So it could be something as incredible as that. And we've seen it. We've seen Verstappen win at Paul Ricard with an extra pit stop. We've seen Hamilton win the Hungaroring with an extra pit stop. Not this season, but a couple of seasons ago. It could come down to that. It's just so exciting. And the thing is both of them have dominated races at Abu Dhabi before. They've both led races from start to finish in Abu Dhabi. So there isn't even that to go on. And we've got a new layout. So there isn't even a form guide. It's
no new layout looks cool though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad they did something about it, because the thing is, Yasmin, always this is one of my absolute favorite races to go to. It is absolutely amazing to be there in person and see this incredible venue of, money is no object. We've got more money than sense, pretty much. We can build anything we want here. And for years I said, look, you can build anything you want. I hope you kept the receipt, because I want my money back, because this is a terrible racetrack.
I still think the hotel looks like a giant razor.
It does look like a giant razor. That's accurate.
Yeah, suppose it does. Anyway, the good news is they've actually listened now, and they've said, right, you're right, we are changing it because it needs to be changed. The races are usually boring. When I've been to Abu Dhabi before, it's always been a fantastic weekend, and then the race starts, and then you just think, right, let's just get this out of the way, and then we can get back to what we were doing before. It's an afterthought. This definitely won't be an afterthought this time. Now, they've got this brand new and improved layout, and they've got this absolute box office gold, the finale of this championship that we'll always be talking about from 100 years from now. If Formula One is still going, we'll still talk about this one as one of the best. So let's hope the race lives up to that expectation. But it will be tension filled right to the end.
Definitely. I do have one. It's more a hope than a prediction that by Sunday evening, Ron Howard has practically completed the first draft of his next F1 movie.
I think if we were doing podiums, it would be one extreme or the other. It's either going to be like Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas in any configuration order-wise, or it's going to be like a Tsunoda, Latifi, Alonso podium or something wild. It's going to be one extreme or the other.
Yeah, I think one of the championship protagonists, and I don't know which one, is not going to finish the race.
Yeah, I'm the same, but I just couldn't call it. If you do want to call it, go to the website, go to the game section and the 2021 Prediction League, put in your top three, your pole, fastest lap, is there going to be a safety car, and how many DNFs? At least you don't have to predict who. And we'll see how that plays out.
It just feels like it's destiny that something crazy has to happen, doesn't it?
I don't know, being Abu Dhabi, there's always a chance it would be just a bit of a snooze fest. Because, as I said before, you had a few of them. But I even argue that the 2010 World Championship, which went down to Abu Dhabi with 4 drivers that could win it, it's the only time we've ever had a championship decided with 4 drivers in the equation. And that race, that 2010 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, was absolutely terrible. A bore fest from start to finish, pretty much. It was just Vettel leading and then Alonso getting trapped behind Vitaly Petrov and they couldn't pass him for the rest of the day. So that's what made the championship. I hope it's a little bit better than that. And given the way these two are smacking the crap out of each other, I expect it to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we want, really, isn't it? Regardless of who it is, we want Max and Lewis first and second on the grid for the start of the race, and then just do what they've been doing all year, which is leave the rest of the pack and sort it out amongst themselves 10 seconds down the road.
Can you imagine what it's going to be like if we get to 5 laps to go and Lewis is in DRS range on Max Verstappen, and it's like, okay, this is it. This is what the whole year's been about. Pass him to win the championship.
Yeah, it sounds like a movie, not real sport.
Yeah,
I have been known to stand up at exciting points during races, or towards the end of an exciting race. I can't physically sit down. I have to stand up. I might have to stand up for the whole.
Was talking.
I have to stand up. I might have to stand up for the whole of Abu Dhabi.
Right. I mean, it happened. It happened somewhat to me in Jeddah yesterday. Because normally when I'm doing a race, because I'm doing stats for the broadcasters, I'm sitting in a position not dissimilar to the engineers on the pit wall. So it's all very calm and collected. And I've got a notepad and all that stuff, and I try and keep my emotions in check because I've got to keep an eye on things because I need to tell the broadcasters, let's make sure we mention this. When it all started kicking off yesterday, I was out of my chair just as much as everybody else was. I didn't quite give it the full Toto Wolff with my Bose noise cancelling headphones, but it definitely got spicy. I tell you what might happen as well. One other thing that might happen is the two of them might collide on the last lap and go off in the hedge, and then Ocon, whoever the hell's in third place, ends up winning a race completely by surprise, and then we'll cut away to the infield, and Verstappen and Hamilton are having a fight, and they're basically recreating the 1979 Daytona 500 in Formula One, and And the guys from Drive to Survive are there, and they cannot believe their luck. And they're like, "This is brilliant. We're going to have like 80 million people watching this thing on Netflix." And Liberty Media are going to be like, "Cha-ching! Thank you very much."
I'm just sticking out there. If that happens, I feel Michael Massey should get immediately on the radio and say, "Look, whoever wins this wins the championship."
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair.
Well, I still like my concept of just putting Max and Lewis on the podium with David Croft, and David Croft just says, "The winner of the 2021 FIA Formula One World Championship is."
And how long
for
could...
effect.
Going to be revealed right after this ad break. Would you like a total shunt or two, Sean?
Give us two then. It's past my bedtime here. It's 1:36.
Right, Lee. I've got one lined up as well. So if you want to do yours first.
Good stuff, mate. I've got it here. This one was sent in by, is it Cody Piscatelli?
Oh yeah, regular
Yeah.
regular listener and occasional shuntist as well.
Yeah, he was.
I think
on
you mean. Don't you mean Corey Pesatoro? Isn't that his name? Isn't he he's the I'll say violin player, accordion player. That was it. I think he played the accordion.
If this total shunt is that guy,
We've never had an accordion player before, I don't think.
No, it does have to be vaguely related to motorsport. I was born
Yay.
in 1972.
okay,
So they're younger than me, but then again, most people are.
My first arrest involved breaking a man's skull.
This could easily be Jos Verstappen.
It is Jos Verstappen. He was born in 72.
I had to pay a $15,000 punishment for my second violent attack.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it Joey Barton?
Found not guilty today, Joey Barton.
yeah, not guilty.
Hey,
Apparently.
well done, Joey. Nice one. But you finally won something.
Yeah, should we go with Jos Verstappen for this one?
I mean, it sounds very much like Jos Verstappen.
At the
it
moment,
does.
it's nailed on Jos Verstappen in the description so far.
From my first arrest, we know he's been arrested a number of times.
Yes.
Number 4.
Okay.
I have both fought my father and fought alongside my father, both of which I was arrested for.
Is it Cliff Richard?
I was arrested for assaulting my ex-wife when I stalked her, slashed the tires of her car, threatened her life, hit her while violating prior restraining orders.
Sophie Kumpen legitimately has a restraining order against Jos Verstappen.
Wait, I got this. Eamon Holmes.
I was thinking it might be Jesus Christ, given that he fought alongside and against his father.
Yeah, I think he might have been born a little bit before 1972,
Born
though,
in
the Jesus.
72?
Born again, maybe, I don't know.
He is omnipotent. He can be born whenever he wishes.
I ran over my 24-year-old girlfriend with my car, then fled the scene, was arrested for it, and charged with attempted murder, then married her.
Yeah, he's definitely
I'm
been
sensing a
charged.
theme here.
Jos Verstappen has definitely been charged with attempted murder of someone he went on to marry.
Well, it's not Brian Harvey from E17 because he ran over
He
himself.
ran over himself, yeah.
Yeah. Whilst
Is
trying
this-
to get a snack that he dropped.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, he was trying to
Fucking
rescue a
hell.
baked potato.
What? Baked
And reverse
potatoes
their
are not
head.
worth rescuing. If it's on the road already, it's fucked. Leave it there. Get another baked
Didn't he
potato.
say? didn't he say that happened because he'd already eaten too many baked potatoes?
Lad's got a problem.
I feel like we're drifting.
Yeah,
slightly here.
possibly,
Let's get
possibly.
Do you not think this is helpful to the clue, Sean?
I don't think the Brian Harvey stuff is really helping us.
I would like a guess, please. I would accept
Is it
Brian Harvey.
Is it Brian Harvey?
It's about the right age.
Exactly. 1972. He'd have been 19 when they did House of Love. He was 17.
Aside-
1992. Away we go,
Aside
Brian
from
Harvey.
running himself over with a car, do we know of any racing connection that Brian Harvey would have?
That's where it all falls down. I think we might have to stick with Yoss.
Yeah.
I once punched my son in the head while at a test track, then later dropped him off and left him in the side of a road.
Did he ever go and get him, back and bring him home? Is he still by the side of the road?
That Sean will remain a mystery.
Oh, is it Perez's dad? Because Perez spent a long time standing at the side of the road
He
yesterday.
did. No one picked him up.
Number 8. I am known as a hothead on the track, at home, in the club, and in the F1 pit lane.
Oh, he was a hothead in the pit lane, wasn't he? When he caught fire.
That is true.
Number 9. I was the focus of one of the most famous F1 photographs of all time.
When he was a hothead and caught
Benetton
fire.
on fire.
Mm.
Yeah.
And number 10. My son is a rather quick young Formula One driver.
Can I just
So
point
all
out?
of his aggression comes from being left at the side of the road
Yeah,
by his dad after being punched at a test track.
Can I just say,
all is
when
forgiven.
when I said Yoss on the basis that someone had been arrested, I was joking. But
When you said it, I
it
instantly
made
went, well,
perfect
wait a minute,
sense.
Yoss was born in 72. It's Yoss.
I mean, let's be perfectly fucking honest here. Look, yes, I'm Jos Verstappen. We won. Yeah, clue 1 to 7. It's pretty fucking unreal, isn't it?
This takes us back to where does Max
There's your
get
movie,
it from?
Howard. There's your movie.
Now, funnily enough, I had a tweet this afternoon from a friend of the podcast and friend of Sean's, Mike McPherson,
Hi, Mike.
Oh, yes.
who asked for a shout-out, so there it is, who actually said, interesting, no one has addressed the parallels between Max and Nico in pursuit of their first championship, namely the pressure their fathers put on them as they lived the glory days vicariously through their sons. I think that Jos Verstappen shunt kind of sums a lot of it up.
Yeah.
Well,
There's a lot of anger
refute-
there, isn't there?
I refute the idea that Keke put pressure on Nico. In fact, I was always told it was quite the opposite. Keke was staying completely out of the way. There's a great story about when the time Nelson Angelo Piquet, and Nico Rosberg first tested for Williams, which I think was in 2004, before even Nico won the GP2 title. And it was in Barcelona. The test was in Barcelona, as I recall, and Nelson Senior and Keke both showed up as proud dads and everything, and ex-Williams drivers, so they're members of the family. And the story goes that Nelson Piquet could not get out of his son's way. Basically, he was like getting into everything. He wanted to know every last detail. Whereas in contrast to that, Keke Rosberg, all he did was he asked the team, "Could you give me a headset?" Yeah, okay, here you go. Put the headset on, and he went and sat in the main grandstand. So he wasn't even on the same side as a racetrack as his son was, but he was there and just listening to the radio traffic. So that's quite a contrast in parenting styles between the two of them.
It's probably just as well Jos and Max weren't there.
Well,
yeah, I didn't.
So,
Yeah, I didn't think
so
it.
who was it, Jos Verstappen then?
It was Jos Verstappen. I do have another shunt, and I can guarantee there are no arrests in this one.
Okay.
Okay, well, there might be an arrest while we guess.
This one was sent in by... Oh, I'm dreading this. It's one of those Irish names,
Oh, fantastic.
which...
Spell it out.
Caoimhghin, which I think is
That's-
Kievan.
I think it is
Just a
Kievan.
collection of letters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Kevin. Yeah.
Yeah,
think so.
Kievan McPartridge. Otherwise known as Sid.
Well, CM. We'll just call him CM for now.
Right. I was born in 1953.
Nigel Mansell.
I began my single-seater racing career in Formula Ford in 1974. And the third clue, I want to guess after this one, for a time I lived and travelled in a converted school bus that doubled as a garage for my race car.
Converted school bus feels like a very American thing.
So who would be that American?
I don't know. That's 100% of the wisdom I've got to offer.
Do you want to skip this guess and move on?
I
Yeah, I think so.
have nothing.
Okay, my first...
I already said Nigel Mansell.
You have said Nigel Mansell. We'll take that as guess number one. My first championship F1 drive was with Hesketh, although I failed to qualify for any races. After 5 seasons, 64 races, and a total of 15 championship points, I left Formula One and moved to IndyCar, where I participated in 7 seasons with 21 top 10 finishes.
Oh boy, I should know this.
Yeah.
And you got another clue before you need to guess. So, despite a huge crash that left me with multiple breaks, fractures and burns, I continued racing for almost a decade afterwards.
Now wait a sec here. Just recap me the last few clues there.
First championship F1 drivers with Hesketh, didn't qualify for any races. Did 5 seasons, 64 races, and got 15 championship points, and then 7 seasons in IndyCar with 21 top 10 finishes.
And was there one more clue?
Despite a huge crash that left me with multiple breaks, fractures, and burns, I continued racing for almost a decade afterwards.
The answer is Derek Daly.
We will bank that guess. I have competed in 6 Indy 500s, 3 Le Mans 24 hours. My highest placing in each was 9th and 4th, respectively. I have won the 12 Hours of Sebring twice, and I hold the unusual distinction of driving both the first and second place cars in one of these victories. At 13 months, I hold the record for the shortest amount of time from being in Formula Ford to being in F1. And in my first Monaco Grand Prix, I shunted badly and was out on the first lap. In my third Monaco Grand Prix, I came within a gnats of winning but retired on the final lap. Congratulations, Sean, it is Derek Daly.
Is that Connor's dad?
Thank you.
And the spaffer was, I am Irish, raced in a Guinness liveried March, and my son is an IndyCar driver. So, yes. Thank you for that, Kevin. As it's an extra shunt...
I'm no good at American motorsports, I'm afraid.
He's Irish.
American motorsports, IndyCar is American. Sebring is an American race.
After being in Formula One and Le Mans.
I was going to say, there was a lot in there before we got the American bit. You didn't put the bit about him going down the mine in Australia with David Kennedy, which is the most fascinating part of his story.
And we need to learn more about this.
Yeah, because they both of them they were earning good money as mine laborers in Australia. So they went down there and did that for a while because they made such good money that they allowed them to pay for their racing.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? It's a very unusual. It's a very unusual story about racing drivers that they would go and do that sort of hard labor stuff and build the shillings up to go racing. But you know, if anybody who's met either Derek or David Kennedy will know that they're nowhere. You know, they have no problems rolling their sleeves up if they have to. You know, they're pretty old school type of dudes.
Certainly bloody sounds it.
Makes
Wow.
a difference. Doesn't it? Makes a difference to like sort of sitting around going, "Oh, I can't get any sponsors. I'm quitting."
Right. they went halfway around. They went halfway around the world and then halfway down to the center of the world to go and find some money.
Absolutely.
By the way, there was a scale replica of Derek's 1982 Saudia Williams in the Saudia Paddock Club suite this weekend. Saudia had a big space for the first Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and of course it was coincident that for Sir Frank Williams should pass in the very week that we were racing in the country that funded that team early on to its first titles.
Yeah, that was. Did everyone? How many people drove the Williams? Because every time I saw a picture of it over the weekend, it had somebody else behind the wheel. That car got some serious mileage in, from the looks of things.
Well, there was 2 cars originally, and I think Martin Brundle gave it a little bit too much stank on the first night. And because I was listening to them going around. Martin and Damon Hill were out there at the same time, and I said to somebody, I said, well, whichever one of them's ahead is giving it a lot more welly than the guy in second place. When I hear them coming round, I was like, wow, whoever's in the front giving it flat stick, person in second place is taking it nice and easy. So I think Brundle maybe stretched it a little bit beyond what they were expecting the car to do, and there was only 1 car after that.
God damn it, Martin Brundle.
He's one to talk about dangerous driving then. Just want to give another shout out before we're done to a friend of mine, Rick. He's bizarrely opened a rum distillery on the Isle of Man. And I got to try some of the rum at the weekend, and it is very nice. He's actually offered a special to our UK listeners. If you go to outlierDistilling.com, go to the shop and order anything and put in the code 3 legs 4 wheels, you'll get free delivery. And I have a bottle of Hooley rum next to me that I was very privileged to try because I get crashed the launch party on Friday night. And it makes damn good cocktails. And that's probably why I was useless Saturday morning and maybe slept through some of F2. But yeah,
What you're saying is it would make a fantastic Christmas present.
It would. It would make a good Christmas present, and it would make a good drink. But I did promise him he'd say that because it's a mate that's just opened a new business, and we just want to see local businesses do well.
Of course,
because with a name like Three Legs, with 3 legs in the name, we've got to plug the Isle of Man somehow. I think that's about it for tonight. I can't think of anything that we've not covered or touched on. Hang on, let me look at the checklist. Hamilton, Verstappen, Katz. Yeah, it's all there.
yeah, we're done. I think. Yeah, unless anyone has got anything else to add.
There was a lot of cat Twitter. Can I also add in my Twitter right now? And I was just checking the comment section, the bit about riding out of the racetrack with an SUV full of active racing drivers, and they all said Verstappen was out of order. Well, it's got this response from @_PokerHub, who says, "Nobody cares, fuckhead. Who the fuck are you anyway? Nobody." So there we go. There's your moment of zen. That's your moment of zen for today.
Sean, thank you as always. It's been fantastic to have you on, and I know it's pushing 2 a.m. where you are, and obviously you've got a full week's work in the build-up to the big showdown this weekend. Are we calling this one the Jewel in the Desert Part 2?
Part 3, Part 5, Part 4. I can't remember. I've lost track.
It's the shizzle in the dizzle.
That will do. We will let you go and get some well-deserved sleep. And is there a Starbucks anywhere near you? Because you might need one of those in the morning.
Oh yeah, I'm actually just to give you an idea. I'm actually staying in an extremely nice condo. It's on the 38th floor, overlooking the Dubai Marina. So it's extremely. Those of you who are familiar with the Dubai area, will know the Marina is one of the most enjoyable areas to be. And I'm going down and getting breakfast tomorrow with a friend of mine who lives here, so I'm looking forward to that. But just trying to beat this jet lag coming from California to Dubai. It's a 12-hour time change. This is the biggest jet lag you can have on Earth, because obviously if you keep going around the world, it starts counting downwards again. So He was kicking my ass in Saudi Arabia. I'm hoping that this week will be a little bit less bumpy for the sleep cycle.
Well, hopefully we'll be fighting fit by the weekend, and we'll look out for you on Twitter, where you can be found at Virtual Statman as always. And if you want to get hold of us, it's at 3 Legs 4 Wheels on Twitter, Facebook, and the rarely used, I must start doing something with it again, Instagram. And individually on Twitter we are
at Sean Cowper,
at Flood21,
at Total Shunt,
and at Pablo100. Right, let's keep everything crossed for this weekend, and all being well, if our internet holds out in the new iteration of Three Legs Towers, which is probably why it sounds different tonight, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.